Services is in charge of the courthouse. However, the Trump administration has sent certain tactical teams here to Portland and now to other cities. And what we saw last night, for example, and the night before, was federal officers would declare an unlawful assembly, something that usually happens with local police, and they would come out and clear the streets, sometimes going a couple blocks up. And, you know, on July 15th at 2 in the morning, a man named Mark Pettibone says he was walking away from the protests a couple blocks away, and a van came up to him with 4 men in camouflage, jumped out, said, it's okay, grabbed him and threw him into a van. He was detained overnight and released without charges. He says he doesn't know which agency arrested him. We now know that it was one of the 4 agencies: U.S. Marshals, Federal Protective Services, Customs and Border Patrol, or ICE.
This is sort of a separate issue. Portland is well, it's not separate, it is connected. Portland is a majority white city. How does the black community feel about the demographic of the protesters? I mean, I've seen some concerns about the co-opting of a movement.
Well, it is very white here. It's one of the whitest big cities in America. But what we've seen at these protests is a lot more people of color than you usually see in Portland protests, and I've covered them for years here. There are a lot more people of color, and while the movement is not really organized by one group, a lot of the people who are speaking and on the bullhorn are people of color. Now, there is a diverse range of opinions within the black community here about the protests. Some don't like what was vandalism and the throwing water balls at police officers. Others say that kind of thing has always been necessary because police will never allow you to protest peacefully. They will point to Colin Kaepernick and say he wasn't harming anyone, and still they rejected him. But the thing is that the last few days, you know, the last week and a half, everything has changed. The presence of federal officers has really changed the conversation here, where there is very little. It's a very minority opinion here at this point that is still criticizing protesters. The vast majority of criticism is now being levied against the Trump administration and these federal officers.
What is it about Portland that has become a flashpoint?
So, you know, Portland has a history of activism, and so some might say that's what it is. You know, it's unclear. This city is surrounded by very conservative rural voters. It's a Trump base outside of Portland. Portland is a very liberal city and very Democrat blue. And it's very few people of color. At the same time, because there's so few people of color, I think that they're feeling it's a more potent feeling of they feel when they see something like George Floyd to them, because they're very powerless in this city. They're not a majority of anything. I think that might be one reason why they took to the streets with a bit more potency than in other cities where it's a lot more diverse.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time. Sergio Olmos there, a freelance journalist live from Portland.